What conspiracy theories turned out to be true, but most people still don't know about them? The Great Streetcar Conspiracy. The fact that the USA had one of the most advanced and developed public transit systems in the world in the 1950s, and it was deliberately curtailed, stopped, and dismantled in concert between the government, GM, Ford, and other car companies, leading to the promotion and expansion of the inefficient, wasteful suburban sprawls that dominate America today, all for the principal purpose of selling more cars. Propaganda due. An Italian Masonic lodge that included many high-profile people. The stuff they were up to is insane, and also resulted in the government of Italy passing a law prohibiting secret societies. They were behind journalist murders, press takeover, government policy, bombings, etc. That there's a global sex trafficking ring perpetrated by the elite, but bring it up, and it's all. So you believe that children are being sold on Wayfair and held in the basement of a random DC pizza joint? How? No, I believe that crock of bullshit is why everyone dismisses human trafficking as a moral panic. It does happen. It is happening. Two former presidents and a prince were close with the leader of it, and at the very least I'm not debating their potential participation, because that will hijack the point of this comment no more than they are letting on about it. I mean, FFS. Maxwell's trial starts next month. How many people genuinely would know that if you stopped and asked them in the street? Everybody knows the meme of Alex Jones saying they are turning the frogs gay, but he was actually not completely crazy, because they confirmed that a chemical in the water he was talking about caused sex changes in some frogs. We don't actually know if Hitler died in the bunker. The skull that was claimed to be his turned out to be a woman's. UFOs. Blew my mind. The government actually came out and admitted to the claims of pilots and other officials and citizens' reports on them as being legitimate. Of course there are items not identified, but to link that with aliens is not what the government admitted to, which is much more worrisome because it is likely high tech from another country like China or Russia. I'm actually not so sure. There was a time when the B-2 bomber was top secret, an actual black project. Even the Navy and most of the Air Force didn't know about it because the technology in it was, and still is, highly sensitive and advanced knowledge. Then compare it to the F-117 Nighthawk, where during testing and development, there were like 20 people who knew about it. I have a good friend who is an avid astronomer. He's just an amateur, but he's been doing it since he was like 10 and knows his stuff. He lives about 50-ish miles directly north of an Air Force base that was known, at the time, to have black hangars for general maintenance of fully classified material. He was out observing one night and was surprised when a large black shape covered the stars. He looked up from his telescope and saw it with the naked eye. No idea what it was. An actual UFO. No lights, no sound, nothing. So he had a friend, a fellow astronomer, in the Air Force at that base, and asked him if he knew what came in last night at like 2 o'clock in the morning. His friend guaranteed him that nothing came in and everyone on base was asleep. 10 years later, he gets his answer when he's out observing and sees a very similar shape, asks his friend for a little help and his friend says, why yes, they did get something. He's not at liberty to say what it is, so he called his brother-in-law, who lives down there, to go check it out. He drives by the base and sees a B-2 sitting on the tarmac. For sure the same thing. I think a lot of UFOs and strange objects we hear about from the news are something similar. A test flight of a proof of concept plane or flights of still classified aircraft like a SR-71 or similar aircraft. Almost certainly for the United States, Mexico, or Canada. I mean, sure, it might be Chinese or Russian, but those are long ways away even with refueling mid-ocean in international airspace, and it's not surprising either. A lot of aircraft is classified not so much for its capabilities, but the technology behind it. After all, everyone can acknowledge a F-22 exists, but much of the technology the F-22 is still classified, and some people say, no, that's impossible. I'd have heard something, and my response is, not necessarily. Most aircraft is bigger than you think. Like an F-22 is huge, much bigger than an F-16, and it's surprisingly quiet. Quieter than most jets its size at a given approximate altitude. I've seen the F-22 at an airshow, and unless you're directly behind it, it's significantly less loud than an F-16, and you won't hear it until it's already past you. even though it's not going anywhere close to the speed of sound. The government has been suppressing technologies in order to keep industries alive. Water-powered cars, the Tesla energy device, batteries that work too well, stem cell therapy, etc. The King of Spain evaded money and has very dirty business because of his total legal immunity that authorizes him. Constitution hasn't changed as for the current king to literally do anything. TOR was a government program. USA government via CIA was behind every coup d'etat against nationalist governments in Latin America in the 50s, 60s and 70s. Guatemala, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Chile and so on. Planned obsolescence. Manufacturers actually design their products to fail, so we become repeat consumers. I believe it started light bulbs. In the 1920s the light bulb competitors met and agreed to stop making the bulbs last long. There is currently a light bulb that has been on since 1901, obviously a bulb before the plan was set in place. Conspiracies and collusion happen all the time. The powerful world leaders and corporations collude and pull strings. The reason DDR4 RAM was so much more expensive than DDR3 and the price never dropped was because the manufacturers colluded to all keep their prices high and to not be competitive. The sinking of the Lusitania, it was a civilian liner, but was carrying a cache of ammunition. That information was deliberately leaked to the Germans and they sunk the ship, causing outrage in the USA and generating public support for US entry into the war against Germany. This was not the only thing that was used to generate public support for going to war against Germany. Germany asked Mexico to attack the USA if the USA chose to declare war on Germany, and this was also used to stir up anger at Germany. That the US government and other agencies actively watch 4chan and monitor it, as it is a collective anonymized forum where people can freely say whatever they want. Also that Israel and multiple other Israeli focus groups actively post slide threads in order to push agendas and generally bombard certain boards with useless things in order to drive people away and fragment communities. I don't think a lot of people know they found the origin of the man from Tuad story. Basically the story goes back in like the 50s. A man was stopped at an airport somewhere in Asia. His passport said he was from a country called Tuad. The country does not exist. The police couldn't figure out who he was and took him to a 4th floor hotel room. The man disappeared without the guards seeing him. There has been plenty of speculation of who the man was. Secret agent was probably the biggest theory. The whole story was based on an actual event, but nowhere near as intriguing as the conspiracy theories. Over time it became a legend that's mentioned a lot with stories like the Somerton Man. Recently they have found the original story of the man from Tuat, and it is very different than the legend it has become. That the reason why MSG, monosodium glutamate, got a bad rap is because of the West looking at Asian cuisine as dangerous or dirty and made correlation between headaches, palpitations, etc. and MSG without concrete scientific data to back it up. In reality, MSG doesn't have negative health effects and all it ever did was enhance that umami flavor. CIA helped traffic mountains of coke in the US in the 80s to siphon profits into right-wing terrorist torture murder squads in Latin America to take out people protesting for a better life for the poor majorities. Also, CIA and allied Saudi government money created the movement that would be renamed as the Taliban. Weather control. When I bring it up, so many people lose their minds. It's on Google, for the love of the Lord. Operation Northwoods and MK Ultra. Yes, the Gov did do human experiments with LSD on unknowing American citizens. Yes, the Gov had a plan to bomb US infrastructure and blame it on the Cubans. False flag attack. But this isn't like those plans that make, but never actually use. The entire Joint Chiefs of Staff and CIA backed the plan's implementation. JFK was the only reason it didn't happen. Don't believe me? That's fine. Do your own research. Probably better than believing some guy on Reddit.